A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Tonight the focus is going to be largely on food tech and the F&B industry in India. In the first segment, we have Karan Tanna, CEO and founder of Ghost Kitchens, and in the second segment, a chat lined up with Prateek Bakhtiani, founder Ether. Now, the groundwork for cloud kitchens was laid way back in the 2000s when food delivery services started to take off. It's fascinating how a cloud kitchen, or ghost kitchen as some may call it, is essentially a setup without the traditional dine-in space. These are tech-driven virtual restaurants that don't serve food on site. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic also accelerated the popularity of these virtual kitchens. And I caught up with Karan Tanna, CEO and founder of Ghost Kitchens, to see what lies beyond this current trend and where he sees the future of cloud kitchens heading. Listen in. Karan, good to have you on Leaders of Tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Karan, I would like to start the interview by asking you an overview of the food tech sector in India. Tell me, how have you seen this space evolve over the years since you've been in the business for over 12 years? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, food tech is at a space where I can say that it's getting into its adulthood. 2016-17 is when it just started picking up on its feet. Swiggy, Zomato, of course. We owe them for creating this industry, making it so convenient.
Yeah.
We always used to order food delivery through the pamphlets, but they made it so convenient that people now started choosing eating in over going out. So, the industry started opening up, more and more cloud kitchens started coming up, more and more dine-in brands started to offer food delivery, but it took time for everyone to understand the economics. Also, the aggregators in their initial phase were giving a lot of discounts. They were doing things which are not appropriate for their unit economics also in order to grab the market share, which is very obvious. But now, since last couple of years, they have started to focus on their unit economics, and hence the entire industry started to get normalized, started to get mature. Fly-by-the-day operators are getting eliminated. So you need to be really sharp in your operations. You need to be really sharp in providing a good customer experience.
Right, absolutely. Now, I definitely want to know your vision for Ghost Kitchens, and especially so because, I understand cloud kitchens or virtual kitchens, whatever you, call them, they have definitely redefined traditional dining, but along with it, comes a lot of challenges like the lack of brand loyalty, perhaps, you don't have a physical presence, which are traditional, very integral to, your restaurants and stuff. So how do you make a mark? How do you plan to make a mark in this space?
We look at food delivery very differently. We look at it like e-commerce, what e-commerce was before 10 years, 12 years, where people had just started to order online. They had started to get comfortable. The brands started to use those platforms to launch because the cost of capital is much lesser and you can experiment and, check the product market fit.
Sure.
And then once the brand picks up, you go on the high street, build up a big brand. So we are also seeing a transition of our company from Ghost Kitchens into a QSR brands company.
Yeah.
We want to create a modern day Yum Brands of India.
Okay, all right. Karan, I understand you also raised $5 million in your recent Series A funding. Tell me, how do you plan to make use of this investment, in terms of innovation, expansion? What can you tell us?
Yep, we raised 5 million in the market, which is very tight. As we all know that there is winter in funding startups going on, which only builds up conviction in the way we are operating the business, in our operational capability, and in the unit economics and the numbers that we are doing right now. So, we just want to double down on that, but for that we want to leverage next 6 to 8 months to build up a strong foundation. We still feel that because it's a brick and mortar business, there are some nuts and bolts which needs to be tightened.
Yeah.
So we will use this year to do a tightening of those nuts and bolts to build up a strong foundation, and then perhaps hyperscale from next year onwards. We are saving money and getting ready, and then we will start deploying and growing from the first quarter of next year. So that's the plan.
Fantastic. Looking forward. Speaking of scalability, right now, I'm coming from the point of view that the show Leaders of Tomorrow is watched by a lot of young entrepreneurs, a lot of small or medium-sized businesses. So, and they often seek advice, from established companies and from startup owners themselves in terms of how they can really scale. So, I want to understand from you, what were the biggest challenges, when you were trying to scale Ghost Kitchens? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, if it's about sharing an advice, I'm also still learning. But at the same time, whatever little experience I have gained, we have never looked at challenges as challenges because it glorifies the entire problem. Because in any business, you will encounter some kind of day-to-day problems to be solved.
Yeah.
So these are the problems which you need to solve and welcome the new problem tomorrow and solve that and keep going. So there are no challenges as such which creates a bump in the journey, but there are problems that we need to solve on everyday basis. In our context, because it's a very thin margin business, there is always a challenge of maintaining margins, of having team members that are well trained, reducing the cost of manpower, making sure that we we don't have a chance in terms of customer trying us for second time.
Sure.
So we have a very small window since we can't talk to the customer and know what exactly his issue was and solve it. He doesn't talk to us. So we have a very small window of retaining the customer. So that's a problem that we are constantly solving and we are improving quarter on quarter. So there are such problems that come up. Dairy prices have suddenly increased. So we see the increase in raw material price. So it is such a dynamic business that if you start taking these things as a challenge, it will bog you down. So I think building up a strong product, because end of the day that is what people consume, and if the product is good, they'll be willing to pay a price for it. And if you are generating good amount of gross profits, a lot of your problems can be solved by the margins that you have. So that's how we look at business. And in cloud kitchens, of course, margins are the biggest problem to solve, and everyone should be cognizant about every small expense that they are making.
Right. Karan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that you are also planning to expand to about 7 to 8 physical stores in Mumbai and Ahmedabad within this financial year, right?
Yeah.
So I'm keen to understand the rationale behind this, because at the core you have a virtual business, right? So what is the reason behind going physical with physical stores and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, we do have virtual as the core of our business right now. 100% of our business is food delivery, but we have spent 3-4 hours learning the pulse of food delivery business. We understand what the consumer wants, we understand what the aggregator wants and how their algorithm perhaps behaves. So we know how to organically grow business, and that has helped us to build up very strong brands which have a high repeat ratio on online platforms. Now we feel that if we get those brands offline, we will be very capital efficient, because from day one maybe that store is breaking even due to the food delivery sales we are already making, and B, it will help us to penetrate further in that region. It will create a brand recall. People will see the brand on high street. Our food delivery sales will also increase. Plus, we will have dine-in sale, which has higher margins. So, a strategy of hybrid brands, which is food delivery plus retail. Like, again, I'll draw a reference of a lot of e-commerce brands, how they were only digital first, and then they started having stores, which helped them to create brand confidence, showcase their product. So we want to use the same strategy and be a food brand company rather than only virtual brand company going forward.
Right. So we spoke about challenges. Now I want to ask you about the opportunities, especially for smaller businesses, in the food tech sector. What can you tell us about the opportunities present in India today in this market?
I feel that because, as I mentioned earlier, that the food tech industry is just getting into maturity, and the idea is to save on margins. So few SaaS companies which can optimize the performance of the brands on aggregators. For example, companies that can tell the brands that what is it that you need to do in order to get a better visibility on aggregators, in order to get more impression on aggregators. You would have heard of a lot of e-commerce tools that help brands to optimize their performance on likes of Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Similarly, there can be a good opportunity of SaaS companies which extract data from the aggregators or from the brand's point of sale and throw out the actions that the brand needs to do in order to improve their own visibility and ranking on aggregator, which will give them a lot of organic growth. So I feel a lot of SaaS products will come up.
Many entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, there is a wave of aspiration. They want to go global, from local. Do you have an ambition like that as well?
Well, we have an ambition to, make a mark with our food, right? So if that journey leads us to global presence, why not? So, we feel that India in itself is a strong market for now. We still have around 10x, 20x, 30x growth potential in India. Having said that, with celebrity brands, with a lot of untapped potential that we will unlock by collaborating with them, if there is an opportunity that might come in global markets, we would be happy to test it out, but we don't want to do it at the cost of spending the bandwidth there when there is an opportunity in India. So of course, everyone loves Indian food. There are a lot of Indians, diaspora demographic can be targeted. A lot of residents of those countries, locals, have also started to enjoy Indian food. So opportunity is there, our aspiration and ambition is there, but not at the cost of leveraging bandwidth and capital at a place where we will not get the maximum yield.
Right. Finally, my final question to you: what is the road ahead for Ghost Kitchens, your company? What's the vision for the next 5 to 10 years? What can you tell us?
I'll re-emphasize the vision is to be Yum Brands of India. We want to give out 5, 6, 7 brands that have multiple stores. We want to give out brands that leave a legacy, which inspire young entrepreneurs, that we can also create that brand. In our era, whenever we start, we always look up to McDonald's, that we want to build a company like that when we are young in the business, and then we realize the realities of business. So we want to create brands that really inspire other people to start QSR brands and scale them up, or start food business and scale them up. And we want to spread love through food. I mean, that will help us to create a good business.
Right. I think I really liked what you said, spreading love through food. I think that really sounds amazing, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to people enjoying our food. Thank you.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Leaders of Tomorrow. In this segment, the spotlight will be on India's chocolate market, challenges, innovations, along with advice for MSMEs in the food industry. I'm going to be joined shortly in the studio by Prateek Bakhtiani, founder of Ether. I'll be chatting about his entrepreneurial approach and much more. Prateek, thank you so much for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honor.
I want to kick this off by talking a little bit about your journey. What inspired you to set up Ether? I understand it started out as a test kitchen back in 2018, and now it's evolved into a retail brand. Take us through your journey.
Right, I'll take a couple of steps back because there's a lot that led up to me launching Ether. So I started out in chocolate, and mind you, chocolate is an incredibly specialized field in the larger scope of food. Mm-hmm. So I started out in this very specialized field when I was only 20. So I'd already had about 5, almost 6 years of experience developing a very singular, focused, creative vision and a creative force that I think was unique in a way that I felt empowered to start a business that showcased that.
Sure.
One thing that did happen though was that when I finally found that confidence, I was working at that time in Las Vegas in Nevada with a World Chocolate Master. And for the uninitiated amongst you, the Chocolate Masters are sort of like the Oscars or the Olympics, to keep it topical, of the chocolate world. So I was entrenched in this environment of what was very, very, very cutting edge in the global chocolate marketplace. And I wanted to bring that global competitiveness and the ability to practice that sort of elevated craftsmanship to India. And so the correct format for that, of course, was a test kitchen.
Every year, every season, we have a theme. This time around, the theme is powering entrepreneurs for the global stage for our show. And, we are speaking to entrepreneurs about thinking big, thinking global. So I'm actually keen to understand a little bit more about your experiences in Europe and USA in terms of how that has, shaped your entrepreneurial approach, perhaps when you were starting out also.
I think, getting specific about it, I started out personally in Ireland. In Ireland, I learned all about farming and its importance to food, and then I moved to Paris, where I learned, I think, finesse, what the role that finesse plays in food, and then I moved to Belgium, where I learned that, and I worked at this like incredible 3 Michelin star restaurant there, and finesse is all good, but you need finery, right? If you want people to pay the prices that you want them to pay, you need finery. That was great. And then I moved to Italy. In Italy, they were like, okay, great, you have finery, you have finesse, but this gelato just needs to be good. I don't care how fine it is, it just needs to be good. And I learned the importance of that. And then after that, I moved to the New World, where, in Canada, I worked at this incredible small place in Vancouver, where I learned how to make chocolate speak in nuance and understated. And then I moved to Mexico, where I learned how to, don't do that, make it bold and expressive and Mexican in that very quintessentially Mexican way. And then finally, before starting Ether, I moved to the States, where I learned, I think, one, how to synthesize all of these experiences into a clear vision, but also how to make that vision modern and experimental, which is one of those things that Ether has become synonymous with.
So Prateek, you have definitely moved across the world. So then why India? What attracted you to the Indian market? And specifically, what are the opportunities do you see in the current chocolate industry? Is this the right time to be in the business of chocolates?
Here's my advice to you. If you are thinking about if this is the right time in the industry to start a chocolate company, don't start a chocolate company. I think the only people that should be starting chocolate companies or any creative endeavors really are people the force of whose creative vision and their hunger to materialize is so violently singular that it keeps you up at night.
All right. And how are you tackling the challenges of, the rising global prices of cocoa, and are they impacting smaller businesses differently versus, larger chocolate companies?
I mean, don't get me wrong, it is an incredibly difficult time. Now that we're getting into the brass tacks of it, it's an incredibly difficult time to be a chocolatier, especially one such as Ether, who isn't and doesn't intend to be backwards integrated to maximize profits. We see a lot of craft chocolate enterprises in India right now be bean to bar because they're backward integrated into that process. But if you don't intend to do that, yes, I'm not going to lie to you, it is a difficult time. We've seen very recently with a lot of our vendors, the prices of the chocolate and a lot of our ingredients rise up to 300% over the course of just a couple of months. And that is an appetite for flexibility in pricing that the customer very rightfully doesn't have. So you suffer a lot with profitability then. But it is a double-edged sword, right? It does test the mettle of your conviction to your ingredients and to your product. Like, how much pain are you willing to suffer? How much in profitability? How much change in plans are you willing to suffer before you say, okay, you know what? I have to just buy cheaper chocolate and sacrifice the quality of my product.
When we talk about India, Indian consumers, they love their mithais, right? So do you see an opportunity for a chocolate brand, to make its mark, and how do you make a mark then?
in India and actually globally, pastry and chocolate has always been something that restaurants will not prioritize. It's an afterthought. In India, when you're gifting or when you're celebrating, chocolate is always going to be second to mithai, as you correctly said. But that is changing. Slowly, customers are learning all about the nuance in single origin dark chocolate. They are coming to meet us where we are, and that is only going to be sustainable, and that is only going to accelerate. That change is only going to be effective if we continue to stand confidently in the pride that we have in our craft.
And finally, one piece of advice that you have, for all the smaller entrepreneurs who are watching this show today and who want to make a mark in India's chocolate market, what would you like to say?
Time. I think give yourself time. Be patient, just because, and I think I said this earlier as well, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Prateek, for joining us today. It was a lovely chat.
Thank you so much again for having me.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.